Welcome into Starting Nine here on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick here every Tuesday and Wednesday on the channel at 9 a.m. This stays up on the YouTube channel all day, so if you miss any part of it, you can come back and get to it later. We've got a guest today, Alfredo Arteaga from 3 Yards Per Carry. He's going to be joining me about halfway through the show. We've also got some great sponsors. Want to tell you about one of them, our friends over at everythingtradeshows.com. Everythingtradeshows.com is exactly where you want to go if your company is going back to trade shows. They're based right here in Fort Lauderdale, but they service all 50 states. We all obviously know COVID's still going on right now, but a lot of people are still going back to trade shows. You got to get yourself back in front of people if you're a business. This is one that works with all kinds of great businesses, including Microsoft and Citrix. Again, they're based right here in Lauderdale, but they service all 50 states. And if you mention 5 Reasons when you go to Everything Trade Shows, especially to our friend Chris Chase, they will do a booth rendering for you for free. They'll show you exactly how it's going to look like before you decide that you're going to go ahead with the order. So go to everythingtradeshows.com. Here's the phone number, 954-791-8882. That's 954-791-8882. All right, for those of you who are looking for Miami Heat content, not going to do a ton of that today. Everybody clicks the channel. But we do have a new 5 on the floor that's going up here probably in about an hour. Did one with Brady Hawk and Alex Toledo talking about P.J. Tucker last night, kind of a P.J. Tucker appreciation episode. I know our producer, Manny Chang, will like that one. So we're going to put that one up probably around 10:30. So check that out on the podcast feeds, and that'll end up here on the channel as well. We did one the other day that we wanted to let sit for a little bit because it was getting a lot of feedback, which was why the Heat are playing so well against other contenders. So, of course, the Heat resume play on Wednesday. They'll be back against Atlanta. Gabe Vincent has cleared protocols. They don't, as to this point, know if they'll have Jimmy Butler back, although I'm hearing there's a pretty good chance, and Butler is questionable. But we're going to talk Dolphins today, obviously. That's in the news. Brian Flores, the news dropping yesterday on Black Monday that he was eliminated as Dolphin head coach. I think it surprised a lot of us. 94% of the people polled on 5 Reasons Sports did not like the move. 94%. And when I put it up there, in comparison to Chris Grier, if you only had to get rid of one, since we had another of these power struggles, as you always have at the end here, 88% said Grier was the guy who should go, not Flores. Only 12% said Flores. So we know where the fans are, but we also know that there's a pivot, right? Like, so, okay, the other coach is gone. He had a losing record. Everybody will sort of justify this any way that they want. And I had my issues with certain things that Flores did this year, whether it was game management, the Jacksonville game, particularly the way that he handled Tua from the sort of the love affair with Jacoby Brissett, after the love affair with Ryan Fitzpatrick the year before. I thought that playing Brissett in one of the games that Tua probably could have played may have cost him the season. And also just the way he discussed Tua publicly. He didn't really support his quarterback, which I think as a head coach you have to do, even if you're not totally sold on the guy, okay? And so I had my issues with Flores, and clearly there were some communication issues in-house. But all Steve Rush just cut my feed. But also, beyond that, I thought he was the best of the recent coaches that they've had, honestly. I mean, and I pulled this one too. Philbin, Gase, or Flores, overwhelmingly, people thought Flores was the best of the 3. And I don't think that should be a surprise. I mean, Brian Flores had got a pretty good run from the fans here until the 1-7 start. There were things that needed to be fixed, again, like the start to the season. I thought that he did not coach as well with expectations as he did when he didn't have expectations. He got too conservative and then finally let loose when the season was essentially over. I mean, you had to run the table from that point, and, you know, that was almost impossible to do. I mean, no team has ever done that, all right? So we're going to go forward today, okay? I mean, I think if you want to catch up on all the Brian Flores stuff, it's all here on the YouTube channel. We did a 2-hour special yesterday. 3 Yards Per Carry episode is also up. Alex Dono did an hour show yesterday. So we've covered kind of the Flores situation. More of it is going to trickle out because the Dolphins are dysfunctional. Everybody blames each other. As I said, they don't play playoff games. They play blame games. We should put that on a T-shirt since we can't sell the Trust the Flores shirts anymore, right? Just like we can't sell the Will Fuller shirts, although I don't think we actually sold the Will Fuller shirt. And it does make me wonder how it is that the general manager who just paid $10 million, basically $2.5 million per catch to Will Fuller, is being entrusted with more and more decisions. But the coach, who I thought made the best of some of those decisions, is out. Okay? But again, forward. So what's next? And when you start to take a look at the coaches who have been here in recent years, there is no real pattern. It's all over the place, okay? It's all over the place. I mean, let's go back to previous to Steve Ross's tenure, right? Huizenga's tenure, okay? Huizenga inherits Don Shula. There's nothing really to do with Don Shula other than just let Don Shula be Don Shula, right? So he did that at the beginning. And then there was a drumbeat here in this town. And people who are not as old as me don't remember this, but for all of the love upon Don Shula's passing, which was obviously completely justified. I mean, not people happy about his passing, but you understand what I mean. For all of the adulation and all the rest of that, and greatest coach of all time, the reality is, in 1995, people wanted Don Shula out, okay? Jimmy Johnson was the hot thing then. He'd won 2 championships here with you. He had won 2 championships in Dallas. He had swagger. The Dolphins needed some swagger. 1995, you go back to Shula's last year, was not good. Now, these days you would take it, okay? But at that point, they were projected to win the Super Bowl. They spent a ton of money, and they brought in all of these former first-round picks. They had 22 former first-round picks on the roster in 1995. And they started the season by blowing out Buffalo. And I believe they were 9-2 and then finished 9-7 and missed the playoffs. Or they made the playoffs and were knocked out. I have to take a look at it. But 1995 did not end well. And so when the season ended, it was pretty clear. They were going to get Jimmy Johnson. And Jimmy Johnson was such a heralded addition, or I guess return, more so, because he'd been here with UM, that he was on par with the Pat Riley addition with Miami, with the Heat. I mean, you were expecting Jimmy to have that kind of success, the success that Pat ultimately had. But here was the difference between Jimmy and Pat. Pat was in it for the long haul. Jimmy wasn't, okay? Jimmy wanted to trade his stocks. Jimmy hadn't really gotten over the passing of his mother. Jimmy wanted to play with his dog Buttercup, okay, during practices. Jimmy just wasn't into it. And that would repeat itself twice more, okay, during Huizenga's tenure, where he tried to get the hot guy, okay, like the guy everybody wanted, right? So, okay, so Jimmy's gone, and Dave Wannstedt wasn't the hot guy, but Dave Wannstedt was the guy that Jimmy Johnson wanted to actually coach the team so Jimmy could just do nothing his last year. So then Dave just kind of stuck around, right? And Dave had that great defense, but Dave couldn't build an offense with it. And so the best years of Zach Thomas, Jason Taylor, Pat Surtain, Sam Madison, Tim Bowens were essentially wasted during Dave's tenure, okay? Even though they won a pretty decent amount compared to how they've won in recent years. And then from there, right, some, mistakes of 2004, Wannstedt, interim coach, then that was Todd Bowles, then 2005, the hot guy again, Saban. But the same thing as Jimmy. And then this would repeat itself when Parcells came in, even though Sperano was the coach and they had that really good first year with the Wildcat, it was really a Parcells thing. But Saban and Parcells were kind of the same as Jimmy in the regard that they really weren't that into doing the job. Like they had earned their stripes somewhere else. Saban came and he didn't want to adjust to the differences of pro football as compared to college. You can't just go recruit whoever it is you want. You have to decide to take a Jason Allen at 16th overall. You can't just bully the media like you can in a small town. They'll actually push back on you. You can't just bully the players because they have contracts and they're grown men. And so when you act a certain way with them, they're not going to react the way an 18-year-old who owes his entire future to you will. And also, you can't get everything you want when it comes to medical advice, and you have to make tough decisions. And that's what happened between Breeze and Culpepper. And I never blamed Nick for this, but obviously the wrong decision was made. But he did it based on doctor's advice, that Breeze had a lesser chance to come back whole than Culpepper did. And so Nick checked out, and Alabama offered him the money, and his wife didn't like it here anyway, from what everybody heard, and so they went. And then Parcells, who just came down basically to play the ponies. I mean, that's it. I mean, and alienate Jason Taylor. So Huizenga did the big fish thing, right? he did that, right? The only time he didn't was Cam Cameron, and that was a total disaster, right, for 1 year. Well, Ross has gone the other way, okay? Ross and Parcells didn't click. Parcells had something in his contract that allowed him to get out of the deal if the new owner came in, and so Bill took his money and ran, right? Sperano with him. We all know kind of what happened. And so since then, Ross has tried to take the advice of one advisor or another, whether it's a Mike Tannenbaum or now a Chris Greer or whatever, somebody, or Dan Marino, giving him advice about what sort of candidate he should go for. So, as I've said before, he made an incredibly unexplainable decision to hire Joe Philbin, which, again, if you look back at it, makes no sense, made no sense at the time. A guy who didn't call plays, a guy who had a milquetoast personality, couldn't really lead, was sort of afraid of leadership. Just a weird choice, right? And then he stuck with him too long, okay? And then after the Dan Campbell thing, we all know that Adam Gase, right? Okay. Adam Gase, I didn't blame him for it at the time. Adam Gase was a hot candidate, okay? Hadn't been a head coach, but he had Peyton Manning's approval. A bunch of teams wanted him. He seemed like, well, if you look at the Nick Vay type, right? Like that you've got now, right? Or a LaFleur. Like it seemed like you were getting that type of offensive guy. Except Adam Gase is a fraud. I mean, he basically was made by Peyton Manning. And so that didn't work out. And when things started to go bad with Adam Gase in the last year, he started blaming everybody but himself. And talking about how they had tough road games and were playing tough opponents when the other team had 3 wins. Just no accountability. Was always about injuries. Not a leader type. So then, again, they don't go for the big guy, but they go for Brian Flores, which at the time, it took him seconds to kind of figure it out, but then it made sense. It was like, okay, this guy has a certain gruff leadership. He comes from the New England organization, so there's a lot of winning. Has held all these different jobs in New England, including on the scouting side, which will help him in terms of evaluating players. I liked the move. I think most people liked the move. But obviously, it didn't end up working out, or else we wouldn't be here. So what does he do now? Right? Crazy Eyes Gase, I know. That was the best. What does he do now? Does he go after the big name? He's tried to do that before with Harbaugh. We all don't think it's him this time. Right? And Darlington reported that it's not. Does he try to go for the hot coordinator? Who is that guy this time? I mean, is it still Eric Bieniemy? Why is Eric Bieniemy not getting jobs? It's been 3 years now that he's been in the cycle. Or is it somebody like Manny just decided to put up, his old coach, Doug Peterson, who has won a Super Bowl, who has a relationship with Dan Marino, and who has managed difficult situations before. Now, Manny has his own opinions about that. Manny, don't break in and give them to me. You can give them to me on the thread. But he has had to manage a quarterback situation. He has obviously gotten Philadelphia over the top. And then it petered out. And again, Manny, I'll give you 30 minutes to talk about this when he's hired. Or do you go get a guy like Brian Daboll, who has been here and was relatively sort of, I guess, unimpressive as an offensive coordinator at the time, if you look at their rankings, but I don't know if that was talent, but has gone elsewhere, has kind of rehabilitated his image and his reputation, and is really the guy who developed Josh Allen, who is a completely opposite quarterback to Tua Tagovailoa. But, the idea is if you're trying to build around a quarterback, you may do it with a guy who was actually his quarterback coach at Alabama, which Brian Daboll was. So that's the first guy that the Dolphins have asked to interview. So what kind of search is this going to be? Is this going to be a long search? Obviously, they've got to fulfill the Rooney Rule, right? Even though they just fired a black coach, they still have to interview a black head coach candidate. Maybe it's Bieniemy. Maybe it's somebody else in this cycle. Who knows? Maybe they end up hiring that coach. Or do they ultimately go for the proven name? Now, Doug Peterson is not Sean Payton, okay? I mean, he didn't build that kind of program in Philadelphia. But he won some, and he won a Super Bowl, and he beat the Patriots, and all of those things, I guess, count. And if you're not going to go spend a first-round pick on a Sean Payton or something like that, okay, then maybe it's Peterson that you go for. If you're not going to go get a college coach, again, this organization has tried that. They went and got the best college coach, and that didn't work out. So I'll be curious to see where Ross goes, because here's the thing about this, and this is what we're going to talk about with Alfredo when we bring him on. The thing about this is that this will be judged ultimately, as all coaching changes are, by how the next guy does, right? Like the Brian Flores stuff, like if they start 3-0 next year, everybody's going to be like, well, see, this is why you got rid of Brian Flores, because he had slow starts every season, right? We got off to a better start this year. So the new guy's doing something right. Now, it may end up petering or Petersoning out. But that'll be the mindset there, is that we figured out a way to solve the slow starts. We fired Flores and we got a different coach. But if this search is clunky, okay, if this search is all over the place, as some Dolphin searches have tended to be, and then they get a guy who doesn't have a proven track record, and they're kind of counting on a women of prayer again, and they're trying to sell you hope, I don't think anybody's going to buy it anymore. Because, again, Steve Ross is the guy who signed off on Joe Philbin and Adam Gase, and although I was okay with the move because I kind of liked it, Brian Flores. So nobody's going to trust what Steve Ross says. It's all about results, and the search and how they go about it is going to matter, I think, to people. Because it's going to make you think, did they just do this because Chris Grier couldn't get along with him anymore, or did they do this for the better of the organization? All right, I think we got Alfredo lined up. Let's grab him. You can catch him at 3 yards per carry. One of the three hosts, along with Simon Clancy, Chris Kaufman. He's the one who doesn't do 60 tweet threads, and the other one who doesn't say bullocks. So, Alfredo, we appreciate you joining us. You can follow him at Alf_Artiaga. I do want to mention we do have a new sponsor here. We should check it out, especially you might need this if we're going to do some distance running here, trying to chase the Dolphins candidates. It's called Salis, S-A-L-I-S. I'm going to get this right eventually. Go to getsalis.com. That's getsalis.com. These are endurance release electrolytes. So if you sweat a lot, you want to replenish that. But you don't even have to be a runner. You can be any kind of athlete that requires endurance. Go to getsalis.com, and you'll get basically what you'll get is you'll get replenishment. I mean, essentially, it'll put it all back into you much better than those drinks will. Okay, that you can go get over at the Quickie Mart. Go to getsalis.com, and here's the thing: if you you just have to type it in 5RSN. That's our product code 5RSN, the number 5RSN. You'll get 10% off. So go to getsalis.com and just try them out. We had a couple of friends experiment with them already, and they're really liking them. So again, this is for distance runners. You're a marathon runner, you run a 5K, a 10K, or you just want to feel better. Okay, this is some great stuff to get. So go to getsalis.com. Use our code 5RSN. All right, Alfredo. Let me ask kind of the overriding question. We don't want to look back today. We did that yesterday. It's not. I mean, the politics of this and all the rest of this. It's interesting, but Dolphin fans ultimately going to care about who the coach is. So let me ask you one question. Do you think they have a plan?
I think that they're trying to formulate a plan on the fly, and I think that their plan is essentially just to follow everybody else around. The first interview announced was the Chicago Bears. They were going to talk to Brian Daboll, and what was the first interview announced for the Dolphins? Brian Daboll. I think that this is just something that just came about maybe recently. Like they probably were thinking maybe we have to fire this guy. And I think they just made the decision, essentially after that game on Sunday. There's a lot of rumors about how that came about, and there's one that I do believe, and I've been told that this is the truth, is that he was approached and told you got to make some changes on the offensive side of the ball, namely staff, and he refused. And right there, you have a conflict.
Okay, but Alfredo, I believe your information, okay, and I believe that likely was what happened at the end. But isn't that the kind of question you ask when you know what the answer is? Like my theory on this is They got to 1-7, right?
Mm.
And the assumption, and things weren't working out. There was already a communication breakdown with Greer. Clearly, there was a communication breakdown with Tua. I mean, anyone with eyes saw that. Anyone with ears, okay? And so basically, you're thinking, okay, this guy's probably gone at the end of the year. We're probably going to make a change. I mean, that's where you should start compiling a list, I would think. And then you rip off 7 straight wins, right? And you put yourself in position to get to the playoffs, which nobody was anticipating. And then you have the game that this organization always has, that Steve Ross has seen a million times up in Tennessee. Okay, the game where it's just proven that you're not ready for prime time, and everything that you thought you built was actually built on a house of cards. And so then you basically go to the coach that you're probably planning on firing at the end of the year, and you ask him a question that you know he's going to refuse, which is, will you replace some of these guys on the offensive staff? And he doesn't want his autonomy questioned, or he has loyalties to some of these guys. And so he says no, and you say, okay, you're gone. And if that's the case, if that's the way that this ultimately played out, then you should have had a freaking list, I would think, right? Like
You just described the Dolphins season, but it sounds like the plot from Major League, right? Like,
yes, okay.
Yeah, he finds out, whoa, I'm getting fired. Like, this is happening. We're 1-7. The only thing we can do right now is win the whole thing, right? Right. So he falls just short, and he gets fired anyway. Which makes you think, like, the only thing he could have done to avoid getting fired was doing something historic, ripping off 9 straight wins and making the playoffs. Like, that's the only thing he could have done, which I tend to believe. I think the decision was probably made earlier. They don't seem like they have a plan right now. We'll see who they interview. But, right now they're just sitting like sedentary and waiting for the interviews to come to them. So I don't know. I don't know what they're doing right now.
Well, and they're going to have to interview, for the Rooney Rule as well. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, I hate that we do this, but it's like Eric Bieniemy has been in the cycle now for 3 years. I mean, is anybody going to wait on Eric Bieniemy? Because nobody has before.
Yeah, the problem with Eric Bieniemy is that this happens every single cycle. Everybody says, oh, he's really, really competent. Like, this is a guy that needs to get a job. And then somebody posts his rap sheet from Colorado.
Right.
And then everybody looks at it and sees assault, sees other charges. I won't get into them right here, but, they're not, it's not appetizing to introduce to the media. Like, hey, look, this is our new head coach. And then they start asking questions about what he did at Colorado. So, I don't know about Eric Bieniemy. I think that's probably – I think the hot coordinator now is Byron Leftwich, and he's interviewing now with Chicago. So I think that's a guy – Ben Albright, who has pretty decent information, says that the Dolphins would be interested in Byron Leftwich, which would mean that they have a type, right? They keep going for the hot coordinator that's never coached before, right?
Well, okay, so let's look at the other type, because I mentioned that Huizinga would go the other direction from Ross, right? Huizinga typically went for the proven name, but just expected that guy to have the same passion and fire that he had in another place, and he went 0 for 3, basically. Because I'm not, may rest in peace, but that wasn't about Sperano. That was about Parcells, okay? It was Sperano was put in by Parcells, but it was basically, Jimmy Johnson, Nick Saban, and Bill Parcells. He went for 3 guys who are, considered to be sort of at the top of the profession in a variety of ways. And they all bombed for different reasons, right? Like, I mean, Jimmy didn't bomb necessarily, but he didn't stick around for the end of it. And then obviously with Nick, Nick wanted to get back to college from like the 3rd minute that he was here. And obviously Parcells, he just wanted to fight with Jason Taylor, as I said earlier. I mean, so
and what's funny about Nick Saban is that the other day, one of our posters on OnlyFans showed his coaching staff from his first season. Nick Saban's coaching staff. That guy built the greatest staff maybe in the history of the sport.
Oh yeah,
there was 8 future head coaches on his staff.
No, it's unbelievable. And one of them just beat him yesterday.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that was the safeties coach for the Dolphins.
Right. I mean, one of them just beat him yesterday. So, I mean, it's not like they found a bad coach. Here, this says KJax. They always have a list. These guys are in the business of changing personnel, players, coaches. I mean, I want to believe that. And I will say this, okay? I remember being taken in to a room by the late Brian Wiedmeyer, okay, who was president of the Dolphins for a period of time. Obviously came up through the Dolphins organization before he went to the Browns, had cancer, passed away a few years ago. Brian brought me in to show me their search when the search that ultimately ended up with Cam Cameron. Okay. Like, I mean, took me through the process, and it was really illuminating. Okay, I mean, obviously they completely effed up. Okay, because that's what they do, and they picked the wrong guy in part because an executive who's no longer here was, caught on tape saying, that Mike Tomlin was too hip hop. 2 decades later, Mike Tomlin's back in the playoffs as he's always.
And by the way, a
playoffs.
stat on Mike Tomlin this season, another winning season. That is 15 years in a row a new NFL record without having a losing season.
Right, too hip hop though. Too hip hop.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Mr. Bailey. Right? That was an issue at the time because you know why? Because Mike Tomlin wore one of he wore it not like this. This is for my daughter, okay? But she he wore like a chain, right? So that was it. You could not hire the guy because he had a chain. That'll tell you everything you need to know about the upper levels of the Dolphins organization at that point. I hope they're not exactly like that now. But I will say that he took me through the search, okay, and he showed me. They had a list. They had a list of general managers. They had detailed books on all of them, scouting histories, personnel files. They had everything on these guys. Okay, and they had a GM list, and then it was like a spreadsheet too, where it was like, a flow chart. Where it's like, okay, if you hire this general manager, he will likely hire one of these 2 or 3 coaches. So it was like, okay, if you like this GM, do you like this coach? And I was blown away, honestly, because I mean, look. The Dolphins weren't known to be as incompetent as those in those days. Okay, Brian Weimar was a very good executive. Eddie Jones, prior to him, was a very good executive. Like you've had a feeling that they knew sort of what the hell they were doing under Huizenga. Okay, like in the United organization,
the Heckert family,
the Heckert family, right? They had like competent. So, but even so, like you're on the outside, you don't really think all this is going on. And I was incredibly impressed by the process. Okay, incredibly. And then it came up with Cam Cameron. Okay, and so it's like maybe it's better they don't have a list. I don't know. Maybe it's better than just like following the other teams.
Like you were taking me down memory lane when you were talking about the '95 season, and I have something on that also. But I remember Cam Cameron how they sold it. They said we have Ronnie Brown and Cam Cameron everywhere he goes. Running backs have big years. Sure enough, Ronnie Brown had a monster year. The problem was that they were 0-8 while he was having a monster year. So I guess Cam Cameron was pretty good for fantasy running backs, right?
Well, that was about it. I mean, not only that, Huizenga, may he rest in peace, had like 6 of us beat writers. He brought us into a room to do the sales job directly after the hiring. Like Cam was not in there, but it was like explaining to us the whole thing. And again, it made sense until you realize that Cam Cameron spent more time making sure that Zach Thomas and Jason Taylor didn't have too many shoes in their lockers. Seriously, that was the thing. Okay? Ask Jason sometimes about Cam. Then it was actually coaching the football team and leading them. And he lost them by like week 3. I mean, they were gone. Like that was it. Okay? And Joey Porter challenged him, and it was just a total disaster. Somebody else challenged him on the plane. I think it was, I don't know if Robert Traylor or someone else, but it was just like, he was not, and then like Ross goes out and replaces, like he basically brought back Cam Cameron 2.0 and Joe Philbin. Okay, so here's what I'm going to say as we look ahead to the coaches. Okay, I just don't want them. I don't care. Honestly, I mean, now they'll say they need an offensive guy because it always pivots from one to the next. I don't care about that as much. Okay, I care about a guy who's competent and communicates. Like that. That's it. Like that's it. Like I mean. Competent, communicates, and leads. Now, I thought Flores had the leadership thing. Like, it seemed like it. But there was some kind Flores, of... Apparently, with the way his defensive players have reacted to him, he has... Right?
Yeah, Flores is extremely competent. I would say... you hear me? You hear me good?
Yeah, I got you now.
Okay, yeah, Flores is extremely competent. He's essentially competent Adam Gase. He's just a guy who... he has some character flaws. He can't keep coaches. Like, all you got to do is just go down his hit list. He's fired 4 offensive coordinators, 3 offensive line coaches. Then he replaced them with a guy who's evidently not up to the job. He brought in Chad O'Shea. He uprooted Chad O'Shea from a really good job in New England, where he had been there for years. brought him in for 1 year, and then fired him as soon as the season was over. When everybody was kind of looking at Chad O'Shea and saying, "Damn, he actually did a pretty good job as an offensive coordinator." So it's one or the other. They just got to try to find that competency again. This firing was obviously not about football, because Brian Flores is actually really good at his specialty. That's why I keep saying that Brandon Staley is the fraud. Like, Brandon Staley is the Adam Gase of this last hiring cycle, because he was brought in as defensive guru, and his Los Angeles Chargers defense is one of the worst in the league, despite having first-round picks at every single level, right? Brian Flores is the opposite. Brian Flores came in with the reputation as a great defensive coach.
But Alfredo,
yeah,
he talks a good game. That's the thing.
Yeah. Brandon Staley, he's a good talker.
Oh, we're having some connects.
Yeah, we're having like a little back and forth. But Brian Flores actually is the real deal. Like, he says, he has a reputation as a defensive guru. Guess what? His defenses are always good, and they're always intricate, and they're always smart. And the personnel side of that ball of the ball on the team is really, really good. Like, that's what you're turning over to the next coach, is a lot of talent on defense.
Yeah, no, exactly. But look, it's not excuses, because we acknowledge his flaws. I mean, I don't. I mean, both of us were on board with the flaws. I just didn't think this was time to make that change. I think that the general manager is more of an issue. That's my opinion. But others disagree. I know in some cases you disagree with that. All right, Alfredo, we got to run here, but we appreciate you joining us. Check out the latest episode. Yes.
Yeah. One thing, Chris Kaufman said something on
our
the
lag
podcast.
issue. That's the.
Yeah, we're having a lagging issue. But yeah, Chris Kaufman said something on the podcast that was very, very interesting as far as Chris Greer is concerned. He actually delivered on what his owner, Stephen Ross, told him to do. He told him, gut out the roster, make it young. I guess he collaborated with Flores on some of those picks to get those defensive players in here. He actually delivered on his part. So that's why he keeps sticking around. He doesn't say no to anybody.
Yeah, no, it seems like it. Well, the one thing it seems like he did say no to was the Watson trade, at least for now. But we knew that we knew, and we kind of suggested, I know you guys did too, that Flores was pushing more for that. I think a lot of that has come out into the light after that. All right, we're going to continue to follow this, Alfredo. Follow him at Alf_Artiaga. Check out our sponsors, GetSalis.com. GetSalis.com. Use the code 5RSN. EverythingTradeShows.com. Of course, PrizePicks.com. Use that code 5, FIVE. Get your initial deposit matched. Have a good day. Doug Peterson.